There are 5 questions that the moment someone asks you one of them, you must not answer. Not because you're being rude. Not because you don't trust people, but because answering them, and most Pleto without even thinking, opens a door that invites poverty straight into your life. And once that door is open, it is very hard to close. I know that sounds dramatic, but stay with me because what I am about to share with you comes from thousands of years of Jewish wisdom that was passed quietly from mother to daughter, from rabbi to student, in whispered conversations at kitchen tables and in the corners of synagogues, not written in big books for everyone to read, taught only to those who are readito hear it. And today I'm sharing it with you. There are certain questions that carry what our tradition calls Ayin, Hara, an evil eye, a destructive force. And when you answer them carelessly, you expose the most sacred parts of your life to forces that diminish, drain, and destroy. Money stops flowing, opportunities disappear, things that were going well suddenly start falling apart. And people spend years wondering why. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what those 5 questions are. Why answering them attracts poverty according to our deepest teachings, and what to say instead. By the time I'm finished, you will never look at these questions the same way again. Let me start by telling you something that I think about often. I grew up in a Jewish community in Buenos Aires. My grandmother, my Bubby Esther, was one of those women who seemed to know things that other people didn't know. She had survived things I don't even want to say out loud. She had lost almost everything twice. And yet every single time she rebuilt. She always had enough. Her home always felt full. Even when times were hard, people used to ask her what her secret was. She would just smile and say, "I know what not to say." As a child, I thought that was a strange answer. What does not saying something have to do with having money? I didn't understand. Not until I was much older. Not until I started studying seriously and found these same ideas, the ones my Bubby lived by, written in our sacred texts, explained by our greatest sages, practiced by Jewish families across centuries and continents. And what I found shocked me because the pattern was undeniable. The families that maintained wealth across generations, not just one lucky generation, but sustained wealth through wars, through exile, through economic collapse. These families had something in common. It wasn't just hard work. It wasn't just intelligence. It was a discipline of speech, a set of rules about what you protect with silence. And at the center of those rules, there are 5 questions that no one in those families would ever answer directly. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You work hard. You try to be responsible. You save when you can. You pray. You do everything right. And still it feels like there's a leak somewhere. Like money comes in but never stays. Like every time things start to look better, something happens to pull you back down. If that sounds familiar, I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Because there's a very good chance that one of these 5 questions is part of the reason why. Not the only reason, but part of it. Today, I'm going to walk you through all 5. I'm going to tell you the teaching behind each one. The story that shows why it matters and exactly what to do instead. This is ancient wisdom and it works. I have seen it work in my own life and in the lives of people I love. So let's begin. The first question you must never answer is this one. How much do you earn? I know it seems so simple, so harmless. Someone asks, you tell them what's the problem. Here is the problem. And I want you to understand this not as superstition, but as deep spiritual law in the Talmud and Traxia. The sages teach extensively about something called lashon hara, harmful speech, and its connection to prosperity. But there's a related teaching that goes even deeper. It comes from the principle that what is spoken aloud becomes accessible to forces beyond your control. When you announce the exact measure of your income to someone who hasn't earned the right to know it, you're not just sharing information, you're inviting comparison, envy, and judgment into what our tradition calls your Parnasa, your divinely apportioned sustenance. The Talmud teaches in Tractatata Babatra that a person should never count their money in front of others unnecessarily. The rabbis connected this to the story of Joseph and his brothers. Do you remember what happened? Jacob loved Joseph openly, gave him the famous coat of many colors, and spoke freely about how much he favored him. That open declaration of abundance called down envy so powerful it nearly destroyed an entire family. Joseph ended up in a pit, sold into slavery. The visible announced favor became a target. Now, you might say, well, that was a different time. But I want to tell you about something that happened in my own family. My cousin Raphael, a brilliant man, started a small business importing textiles. 4 years, he was private, quiet, careful. The business grew. Then one day at a family dinner, someone asked him directly, "So, how much are you making now? Give us a number." And Raphael, proud and excited, told them. He told the whole table. Within 3 months, he had 3 family members asking for loans he couldn't refuse. A business partner who suddenly felt he deserved more, and a tax inspector who showed up at his door based on, as far as he could ever tell, a tip from someone who knew too much. The first question you must not answer directly is how much you earn. What do you say instead? You say something simple and true. You say, Baruch Hashem, we have what we need. Blessed be God. We have what we need. Not more, not less. You redirect with gratitude. You close the door politely. And in doing so, you protect what you have from the eyes that would diminish it. But here's what most people miss. This isn't just about protecting yourself from jealous people. It's about your own relationship with your abundance. Every time you reduce your livelihood to a number and hand it to someone who asked out of curiosity or comparison, you participate in shrinking it. You make it smaller than it is. You make it a competition instead of a blessing. Stop doing that. Your Parnasa is between you and God. Protect it like the sacred thing it is. Now pay close attention because the second question I sound that almost everyone answers without thinking, and it may be the most dangerous one of all. The second question you must never answer is this: how much do you have saved? I want to tell you a story from the Torah that most people read as just history, but our sages read as instruction. Did I end the book of Genesis 26? Isaac is living among the Philistines during famine. The land is hard. Everyone is struggling. And yet the Torah tells us that Isaac sowed in that land and received in that year 100-fold. God had blessed him. His flocks grew, his herds grew, his household multiplied. And then the Torah says something that should make everyone Ophis stop and think. It says that the Philistines envied him. And what happened next? The king asked him to leave. The wells his father Abraham had dug were stopped up by his enemies. Everything that had been flowing was blocked. The Ramban, the great medieval commentator, points out that Isaac's problem was not that he was blessed. His problem was that his blessing became visible to those who had not been part of creating it. His wealth was seen. It was counted by outside eyes, and once it was counted by those eyes, it became a target. Now, what does this mean for you today? It means this. When someone asks you how much you have saved, whether it's a neighbor, a cousin, a coworker, even a close friend, the answer is never number. Never. Not because you're ashamed, not because you're hiding something dishonest, but because your savings are a seed in the ground. And seeds that are exposed before they're ready to sprout get eaten by birds. There is a beautiful teaching in Pir Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, that it says, "Who is rich? One who is satisfied with his portion." This is not just about contentment. It's about not making your portion the subject of public examination. The moment you put a number on what you've saved and hand it to someone who didn't ask out of genuine love for your well-being, you've invited judgment into that number. And judgment blocks growth. I had a neighbor, a good woman, Devorah. She worked for 20 years as a nurse. She was careful with money her whole life, not rich, but steady, solid. And one afternoon at a community gathering, she was talking with some women, and someone asked directly, "So after all these years, do you have enough set aside?" And Devorah, proud of her discipline, said yes and told them the amount. Within the year, she had a son who needed help with a business that failed, a sister who needed a loan for medical bills, and a request from her community for a larger contribution than she could comfortably give. She never recovered those savings. She spent her last working years trying to rebuild what she had spent 3 decades creating. The money didn't disappear because bad things happened. Bad things happened to everyone. The money disappeared because it became common knowledge. Once everyone knows what you have, everyone feels they have a relationship with it. What do you say when someone asks how much you have saved? You say, "I'm working on building something for my family's future." You say, "I have what I need for now." You say, Bru Hashem, and you smile. You are not lying. You are protecting. There is a massive difference. Now, this next one changed my life when I finally understood it, because I used to answer this question all the time and I had no idea what it was doing to me. The third question you must never answer is this. What are your plans for that money? Stay with me, because this is where it gets steep. There is a concept in Kabbalah discussed at length in the Zohar about the difference between what is formed in the spiritual realm and what is manifested in the physical world. The Zohar teaches that a blessing before it becomes real in your hands exists first in what we might call potential form. It's real, but it's delicate. And like all delicate things, premature exposure can damage it before it takes full form. When someone asks you, "What are you going to do with that money?" and you answer, and when you describe your plans in detail to someone who didn't need to know, you're releasing something that hadn't finished forming yet. You're letting the air out before the bread has finished rising. Let me tell you about a man named Solomon, not the biblical king, though you'll see the connection in a moment. This was a man in my community in Israel, a builder. He had been saving for years to pen his own construction company. He had a plan, a real plan, carefully thought out. And one evening at a Shabbat dinner, someone around the table asked him what he was planning to do with all the money he had been putting away. And Solomon, full of excitement, full of hope, laid it all out. The business model, the location, the timeline, the projected income. 3 people at that table immediately had opinions. One said it would never work in that market. One offered to be a partner in a way that didn't feel right but was hard to say no to. And one meaning well mentioned it to someone who then approached the same supplier Solomon had been planning to use and got there first. The business he had been planning for 5 years never happened. Now was that the telling that caused it? I can prove a direct line. But our tradition teaches something very clear. The Talmud in Tractate Barakat says a person should not show a friend a gobel tov blessings. The rabbis were saying something with that image. You don't display what is meant for you before it has arrived. Plans are not yet blessings. They are seeds. Seeds need darkness and soil, not air and audience. King Solomon the real one writes in Proverbs chapter 17, "One who guards his mouth and tongue guard his soul from trouble." The sages connected this specifically to financial plans and future intentions. The premature announcement of what you plan to do with resources invites both human interference and spiritual disruption. What do you say instead? You say, "In being guided by what feels right for my family." You say, "I'm still figuring it out." You say nothing, and you smile with the secret weight of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Thesis, what my bubby Esther used to do. People would ask her about her plans, and she would just look at you with those quiet eyes and say,